We are really, really pushing now, Peter. We are at
Jordan, please remind us how small but mighty our channel is. Where are you guys now?
Not to brag, but we have grown 244,000 subscribers already this year. So we want to get to that 250,000 increase this year. We're at almost 561,000 subscribers, and that is through the blood, sweat, tears, illness, 7 day a week work of myself, Colin behind the camera, John Farina doing God's work out there, our new reporter JT, our new producer Michelle, and a lot of others that have made it happen. So please, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe here. In addition to Revolutionary Change, and we will push membership, because I don't even want to tell you how much we spent last month on travel, because it's really giving me a fucking aneurysm and heartburn. But we need to grow our paid membership. By the way, we spent, what was it last month? Over $10,000 just last month. Not on going to the casino, not on fancy dinners, but on the ground reporting in Chicago, Washington, D.C., and Charlotte to expose the fascism. And thank you very much, Tony. Love the pink shirt, because my wife said she was disgusted by my pink shirt. So if my wife is watching, kindly fuck off. Now,
I'm not like that one.
Yeah. And by the way, it's more coral, I would say, than pink, but either way. All right. A lot to get to. Trump and his lead stormtrooper, Greg Bavino, are hinting at doubling down on the ICE terror campaign. So we'll get to that. We also have, we want to introduce Peter and his partner, Jen, have a great new PAC. Yes, PAC. Is it a super PAC?
It is a super PAC, yes.
Super PAC. So you might say, oh, yucky, super PAC. Well, wait to hear what it is that we'll get into a little bit later. But first I want to start because honestly, I believe a lot of this Gestapo terror campaign, ICE, Border Patrol, the SEAL teams, this insane bombing fishermen on Venezuelan boats. I believe it's a mass distraction campaign to distract from what they're trying to hide, which is a massive global corruption / child sex trafficking ring of the elites, politicians, celebrities, athletes, financiers, you name it. And we've had multiple administrations trying to basically bury this. And more disturbing stuff is coming out from not the Epstein files, the Epstein emails that were released from his estate. And this kind of looks like, I don't know, like a Halloween horror house. But the Democrats, which are not really good for anything, I'll give it to them. At least they got these emails through subpoenaing the Epstein estate. New emails are showing really disturbing photos, I would say, from Epstein's island, including, Colin, if you have the first one here, new house oversight dump from Epstein's island shows dental room with walls covered in the masks of old men. If you could click on the photo, I don't have X-ray vision. I don't have a forensic analysis. Who are those old men? Maybe if you zoom in, maybe Bubba, Bill Clinton's on the wall. I don't know. Trump, I don't know who these old men are. But this, to be clear, is in one of Epstein's residences on this island. It's in a dental room, which first I'm asking Peter, why exactly do they have a private dental room on Epstein's?
It seems to me that just about every room in Epstein's compound is one laced with imagery that is supposed to scare the ever-living shit out of you, that if you even think about sharing with other people what you've seen, what's going on there, you might be one to end up on the wall as a display. I can't help but take my eye off of this guy on the left that looks like his nose is about to go below his chin. So that's pretty disturbing on the surface alone. I don't know who the rest of the wonderful world of sex criminals that have been put up on the wall in the back that you can't see very well. But from what we've seen, just from the basics in terms of the interior of any of Epstein's rooms, they are very disturbing, and that's putting it very gently.
Yeah, so there's a lot to get to. Again, I don't know who the masks are. Maybe they're just generic. But A, why do you have a dental room on this private island? What's like, the clients that were getting these massages also getting dental work at the same time? Why do you have these masks? It's very, very bizarre. And shout out, by the way, getting us started, new Status Coup member, Jenny. Thank you, Jenny. We want to finish the year strong, and we need to, because again, we are on the ground. JT is under the weather, so am I, but JT's sick. But I'm talking to him about possibly sending him to Minneapolis. As you know, Trump is now going after the Somalian community and has basically said that we want to get rid of Ilhan Omar and the entire Somali community, which is massive in Minneapolis, and the ICE raids are beginning there. So we want to get on the ground there, but we're going to need your help because we're not funded by Jeffrey Epstein's whole network. We're not funded by United Healthcare, Goldman Sachs, the remaining Koch brother, George Soros, or any of those fucks. We are funded by you. So if you have appreciated, and we have a new promo video, maybe we'll play it later, that captures everywhere we've been, but we really could use your help. I know it's the holiday season. If you can't help us because you have to put your funds elsewhere, that's okay. But if you can, you could support us for as low as $5 a month. It makes a huge difference to support on-the-ground journalism. I also want to show this because as fucked up as the old, geriatric masks were, they also showed photos. This is the interior shot from his estate. I don't know if it was his estate on the island or if it was his estate on the Upper East Side of New York. But it shows a blackboard with names redacted, and the phrases power, plants, and deception. So I don't know what TV shows you watch, Peter.
None.
Okay. I mean, this is kind of like, I don't know, Law and Order merged with CSI, merged with Homeland. I don't know. Obviously, the most important things are who are those names redacted, because they are referring to individuals who have power, individuals who are possibly plants, deployed by the government per se. I don't know. Deception. But this is all pretty creepy and also leads to more questions. Looks like the VIP section in Squid Game. That's
Now, Squid Game I did see, and I would also say that as much as people think that this is like a Trump gotcha and that's what they're trying to get to the bottom of, there are people so much more wealthy and powerful than Trump that you don't even know exist, that probably are involved in this, that don't want themselves exposed. And that's why whatever's going to come out, they're going to control the narrative as much as humanly possible. We'll eventually find out a lot of what's going on, but there's a lot that we will not find out. The people that control the system anyway.
What I think of here when I'm looking at this blackboard, when I'm looking at these masks, is Epstein's main currency, which has been, rumored about, but it's really not a rumor. I mean, it's kind of obvious, was information, and that he had enough information to blackmail people. Well, this would, to me, go with somebody who is basically his whole spiel and his whole MO is kind of like a giant devil's chessboard where he has a chalkboard and there's names under it, and he's connecting names to deception or plants or power, but kind of like he's moving the chess pieces on who he has information on, who he could blackmail. Of course, I'm speculating, but that's really the only thing I can think of why you would have a fucking blackboard with these weird names, sinister sounding phrases with names underneath on top of a dental room of House of Horror, like Halloween, Hall of, what do they call that? The Halloween Mirror or the House of Horror Mirrors?
I know what you're talking about. I don't remember the exact name, but yeah, this is again, everything about Epstein, everything about what they were doing. It's all, as Whitney Webb says, we are one nation under blackmail. And that's what this is all about. It's how do you maintain this power structure? It's like everyone has been caught doing something explicit that if it had gotten out would completely destroy them. And when we hear stories about things that have gone on over the years, some of it exaggerated, some of it underreported, it leads one to believe that in order to get to the top and stay there, with very rare exception, it's like you have to become a product of the lowest form of behavior in order to do it.
Right.
We saw what happened with Diddy, and I'm sure it's a lot worse than even what we've been revealed to understand. And the same, it's true with Epstein and so many others. So none of this surprises me at all.
Well, to me, let me also show that Robert Garcia, Congressman Robert Garcia, says he has obtained new Epstein documents from J.P. Morgan and Deutsche Bank, which will be released this week. And that's where I want to take this because, to me, you got to think about who Donald Trump is, right? And Peter, you grew up kind of in New Jersey area. I grew up in New York. So we both kind of know enough about Donald Trump before he was president. Donald Trump would not, in my view, be trying to bury this kind of stuff if it exposed that he knew about an underage sex trafficking ring. I don't even think he...
Excuse me, are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? I mean,
Exactly.
What's going on? This is crazy.
I don't think Donald Trump, he would just wiggle out of it and say, well, I didn't card them. I didn't know how old they were. I didn't see any of it. I didn't know. I'm not even sure Donald Trump necessarily would be trying to bury all of this if there was evidence that he had relations with a minor. Because again, he could just say, well, Epstein told me they were 20, 24, 25. It's not like you have smoking gun video of him having relations with a minor and you could prove he knew it was a minor. Also, it could be outside of the statute of limitations. Yeah. But we know one of Donald Trump's biggest obsessions in life is depicting that he's a billionaire, depicting that he is a self-made man, even though his daddy bailed him out to the tune of, I think, $400 million. His daddy bailed him out in Atlantic City time after time. That's why he wouldn't give away his taxes, because his taxes would have showed he was not a billionaire. And it's for bragging rights, but it's also to give off the image that he is a success story, when in reality he's not. And to me, could there be evidence in there that he had relations with minors? Of course. Could there be evidence that he knew about the trafficking ring and did nothing? Of course. But what would bother him more? What would be more of a risk to him in his mind? That coming out, or it coming out that, if Epstein had proof that he committed mass financial crimes, that he money laundered, which there's plenty of reporting out there that he was doing some money laundering with Russian oligarchs dating back to the 1990s. I always said Russiagate. I'll tell you what the collusion was. It wasn't with the Trump campaign in Russia. They couldn't get to rallies on time. They was such a fucking clown show. They couldn't collude with a foreign government. He was so deferential to Putin because Putin and Russian oligarchs had a lot of information on him regarding to his finances, regarding to his real estate deals, etc. So why I'm bringing this all up is because there's investigative journalists. Also, Michael Cohen, his former fixer, who is a sleazebag, but he also believes that what Trump is trying to bury is financial crimes that he committed, that Epstein had the goods on him. Colin, if you have that clip, this is from Michael Cohen, his former fixer, who was put in jail for about 5 minutes, got a sweetheart deal to come out, and an investigative journalist about that. They think what really Trump is trying to bury is like blinking red light financial crimes that would be revealed from the Epstein files.
And that was that Jeffrey Epstein believed two things. Now, they don't need to be true, but I think this is what Jeffrey Epstein believed. I think he believed that he had a window onto Donald Trump's finances for whatever reason, maybe advice he'd given him in the past to do with bankruptcy. He therefore thought he knew that Donald Trump had no disposable cash in the early 2000s. And that is why he had question marks when Donald Trump came out of nowhere and paid $45 million for this
for the Palm Beach property.
For the Palm Beach property, which Epstein had wanted. And that Epstein suspected something shady had gone down, whether it was money laundering, because as time would tell, a few years later, Trump sold that building for double the money to a Russian oligarch. And all of this obviously went through a shell company that Trump had created. So there's the insinuation there of money laundering. And then Epstein, in an email to Michael Wolff, raises the question of how Trump disclosed any of that on his tax returns. Did he disclose a capital gain? And given that we sort of know, I think by now, that on Trump's taxes, he declares all these losses, right? It's probably unlikely he declared the capital gain, but I don't know. So I think what I learned was that Jeffrey Epstein believed that he had something on Trump to do with Trump's money, not to do with Trump and sex, but to do with money.
See, I keep saying that on television, and I keep saying that on my Substack, and as well as here on Mea Culpa and elsewhere. And I get attacked a lot from the Democratic side. Why are you still protecting Trump? And it's funny, and I come back and my response is, telling the truth doesn't mean I'm bending the knee. It doesn't mean that I am protecting anybody. I do truly believe that Trump threw Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, right on his ass, because he was a creep, and for probably other reasons as well, meaning, he was trying to poach employees, or he...
You get the point.
I agree with that.
And Michael Cohen, by the way, he hates Trump 1,000 deaths. So for him to say, for those that don't know, Michael Cohen was his lawyer, I believe, from the mid-2000s all the way in the lead up to his, right after he became president, actually. And then Trump threw him under the bus with the whole Stormy Daniels. So if he had the goods, if Michael Cohen had the goods or believed that there was evidence of Trump, fooling around with underage girls, he would come out with it. So I also want to bring up...
And if anybody would know that Trump was diddling, if you will, a sleazy lawyer like Michael Cohen, that's the type of person who would know that stuff.
And by the way, for the plot, for what would be more juicy, I think, to the wider public, it would be if there was images or video of Trump with a girl, as horrific as that would be. The whole financial aspect, although I find it interesting, might be less interesting in terms of to the wider public. But if you want to know the cesspool of corruption in America, this is where I think we should be looking our eyes at, which brings me to J.P. Morgan. For those of you who don't know, that was one of the banks responsible for poisoning Flint, Michigan, who 11 years later still does not have clean water. And that is revealed, shameless plug, in my book, We the Poisoned. That's a good holiday stocking stuffer. Came out last year. We the Poisoned, exposing the Flint water crisis cover-up and the poisoning of 100,000 people. There you go. I didn't even ask him for that. So J.P. Morgan, along with Wells Fargo, they did the financial deal. They issued the bonds that helped poison Flint. It's a very corrupt process that I explained in the book. But why I'm bringing up J.P. Morgan, our journalist and cameraman John Farina asked Congressman Thomas Massey about this a few months ago at one of these hearings where the victims spoke. Colin, if you have that clip.
So in 2023, JP Morgan Chase paid $75 million to settle claims that the bank enabled Epstein's sex trafficking crimes. Is it possible these documents that Republicans and Trump are trying to prevent from coming out have important information that the banks knew about Epstein's
Absolutely. I mean, the first rule of any investigation is follow the money. So we got to follow the bank records. And that is one thing the Oversight Committee is doing that I applaud. Let's hope they get it out there. They can't just hold that information in their committee. follow the money. Which accounts did it come from? Which accounts did it go to? And that's the quickest way to figure out who was doing what.
So, again, connecting the dots here, JP Morgan rank and file workers were sounding the alarm to executives. We should cut the cord with Epstein. These were not just rumors at this point. And they kept him as a client even after his arrest in the 2000s for child prostitution. This was not the main charge that got him put in prison in 2019. This was in the late 2000s. But they kept him as a client, even though a lot of their rank and file were issuing red flags, because there was a lot. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of transactions that seemed obvious to be money laundering, including massive cash withdrawals. I'll read this from the New York Times. Weeks after Jeffrey Epstein died in federal custody in 2019, awaiting prosecution on sex trafficking charges, JP Morgan filed a report alerting the U.S. government to tens of millions of dollars of potentially suspicious transactions involving him and prominent Wall Street and business figures. Could this be in the files they don't want to release? I'd love to know. Who are those prominent Wall Street and business figures? The so-called suspicious activity report the bank filed included transactions with Leon Block, the co-founder of private equity firm Apollo Global Management. As you know, Peter, he's given money to Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump. He plays both sides.
Absolutely.
Glenn Dubin, well-known hedge fund manager, and the Zionist-in-chief, Alan Dershowitz. And trust controlled by Victoria's Secret honcho Leslie Wexner. Nature of the transactions, as well as Epstein's role, unclear. I'm going to go down a little. Several other suspicious activity reports JP Morgan filed in the years before Epstein's 2019 arrests were also included in the documents released on Thursday. They notified federal regulators to some of Epstein's voluminous cash withdrawals, which experts say are a potential hallmark of money laundering and human trafficking. Peter, who was there plenty of reporting on in the 1980s and 90s and 2000s that his real estate business was engaged in money laundering?
Listen, it is a total hoax. Don't believe what you hear. I was always the best person for the job, and I didn't pay people that didn't do a good job. I mean, wouldn't you not pay somebody for doing a really crappy job? Jordan, I am really, really rich, despite what other people have to say. Believe me, believe me. And that's always been his shtick, is to always just claim, everybody else is wrong, I'm right. And, you know, all these stories that you heard in the New York Post and the Asbury Park Press, who cares? I have my name on all of these casinos.
But I want to also point out, if Epstein had the goods on Donald Trump committing financial crimes, Donald Trump's children for the last 15, 20 years have been very actively involved in his business. Now, you could say Donald Trump, would he actually be trying to protect anyone but himself? He'd throw his children overboard. You're probably right. But you'd like to think if Epstein had the goods on him, then he would probably have the goods on Don Jr., Eric Trump, maybe Ivanka, because they are technically running the business.
Yeah, the person in the equation that I don't think gets enough attention, even though he, as Jen likes to say, is really the brains of the operation, is Jared Kushner and the entire Kushner family and the type of shit that they're involved in. And the fact that
you mean the same Jared Kushner who's right now at the table with Vladimir Putin negotiating peace? Yeah.
Master negotiator. But the thing that's always interesting about the whole Ivanka / Kushner saga is the fact that they had broken up, and it was because Kushner didn't like the fact that she wasn't ready to convert to Judaism. And then all of a sudden they magically get back together again. And then the next thing you know, Kushner basically is the person that is effectively running the Trump operation behind the scenes. And that includes all things related to finances. But as I always like to point out, just remember the Kushners go back many a generation, and Jared Kushner's father is a federal criminal. And so they know a thing or two about how to skirt the law as often as possible. And when you're talking about the ultimate power, they're going to use it for all it's worth. As I'm sure you know, and you've probably reported, and we discuss now, the Trumps have probably added at least $1 billion to their family's net worth since he's been back in the White House in not even a year.
Beta, you're fired. $3 billion. $3 billion, not $1 billion.
$3 billion.
Trump's net worth has gone up $3 billion, and that was like as of 2 months ago. Might be even more than that. So Trump's net worth has gone up $3 billion from his crypto scam, mostly his crypto.
Oh my God! Listen. I saw, for those who don't know what I do, I'm in commercial real estate, and if you guys are not familiar with Grant Cardone, this is another one of those scam artists that tries to be Tony Robbins that's out there. There are ads playing on YouTube, maybe even on this live stream, that show Grant Cardone and Eric Trump peddling the latest scam coin for you to get involved in. And I'm of two minds on this, Jordan. On the one hand, yes, it's a scam, but how in the ever-loving hell can you not see the scam when you have a Trump and a Cardone asking you to give them money for the latest meme coin that they're trying to get more money off of? I mean, where do you fall on that?
I mean, he's literally pardoning one of the guy who did the global crypto scam because that guy made Trump's. I mean, you can't make this shit up. But to me, again, I'm not saying it's certainly not out of the question that there are damning revelations about Trump and underage women. Maybe he wants to cover it up, or just young women, and maybe he wants to cover it up because he was stooping them when Melania was pregnant. Maybe he wants to cover it up because he was, just stooping them as a married man. Who knows? But to me, there's a lot of smoke here when it comes to the money laundering. And you have to think about who Jeffrey Epstein was. If you have this tweet from Murtaza Hussein, he was basically known as like the preeminent money launderer around the world. Epstein was a professional money launderer. But starting in the 1980s, who rose in the 1980s? Donald Trump. Starting in the 1980s, this also put it world of governments and intelligence agencies, since that was a useful skill to people needing to fund something like Iran-Contra that required the creation of black budgets. His political influence continued to grow in the years since then, such that he was orchestrating back-channel diplomacy around the world at senior levels in the last decade of his life. Judging from his communications, he was also at least partly ideological and acted upon it. So, bottom line, I don't think Donald Trump's administration is going to release anything this month or ever that implicate him in anything. I don't think they're going. I think he would sooner burn documents before he does that. And infamously, he criticized Nixon for not burning the tapes. So we don't even know if certain documents, because we know that an army of FBI agents was tasked earlier this year with going through the Epstein files and redacting anything having to do with Trump. So we don't know if there is a smoking gun in there, financial or otherwise, that has been lost or been burned. But what I'm saying is, as a journalist, and I've been doing this for a long time, you follow the money, and the smoke here, to me, points towards the money. And most importantly, it doesn't just point to Donald Trump. I think this points to power players and a global influence and corrupt network of oligarchs, politicians, financiers, celebrities, athletes, media, all of them. And it might not necessarily be every one in that network was involved themselves with getting, relations with underage girls. But what did they know about it?
And to me, that's the greatest crime of them all, because I do believe, and this is the thing about Trump with his truthful Tourette's, if you will, he'll say something without even thinking about it. Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein totally stole some girls from my Mar-a-Lago, and that was totally wrong. And they were underage too. And it's like, Donnie, you're telling on yourself. not necessarily that you were committing crimes, but you knew of all of these crimes being committed, and you knew how these children were being abused repeatedly, and you didn't say anything about it. You didn't report it to the FBI. We know you're friends with the FBI, so why the hell were you not reporting this stuff? To me, in some cases, it can be debated that the crimes of Ghislaine Maxwell are just as bad as the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. The grooming and the knowledge that they had that destroyed these lives. Yeah, maybe you didn't commit the act, but you sure as hell facilitated it. So to me, that deserves just as much scrutiny, in my opinion.
Great segue. Speaking of crimes, and I'm taking off the glasses for this one. As a reminder, and you can see the bags because I have a 7-month-old child who's decided not to sleep for 4 months. It's a big problem. You just met him. So if you don't know, because we over the last 5 days, not to brag, we're up 13,000 subscribers. So a lot of you might be new. And thank you to the folks at Midas Touch who had our reporter on, JT Siskowski. We really appreciate the exposure for our reporting. But we, over the last 6 months, have been the leading, and when I say leading, I ain't being dramatic. I mean the leading, one of the only outlets in the trenches on the ground covering a terror campaign from the White House. We were on the ground in Los Angeles as the ICE Gestapo was shooting at protesters, shot at our reporter, Tina Desiree Berg, hit her in the leg. Fortunately, she was wearing a Kevlar vest, so she wasn't injured. We were there for 2-3 weeks. A lot of our footage went viral showing that. We were on the ground for the last 2 months in Chicago. By the way, when I say on the ground, we don't have corporate funding. Just to be on the ground anywhere for 4 or 5 days, that costs us about $2,000 to $3,000. You got to fly a reporter, a cameraman, hotels, renting a car, food. We had to spend about $500 on safety equipment because the Gestapo is shooting stun grenades at journalists and protesters, flashbangs, tear gassing. It's very expensive to stay safe in a fascist fucking dystopia. So we have spent, we just went to Charlotte for a week. We might go to New Orleans and we might go to Minneapolis. Why I tell you all this, Peter, you know, there's a whole lot of outlets out there, and it's not just media. You got nonprofits, NGOs, journalistic outlets, politicians, and they're sending you out the fundraising emails this holiday season, offering you eggnog and asking you to help them fight the fascists. 95% of them are sitting on their ass, bloviating out of their assholes. And some of them I like. It's not a crime to bloviate out of your behind. Not everyone can be on the ground, and it's not a crime or a mark of shame not to be. However, we have a higher overhead. We have a lot more costs than the rest of the YouTubers because we are out there on the ground. Just the last month, we spent over $10,000 between Chicago's reporting, DC, and Charlotte. And that's also, we have payroll. You got to pay me. You got to pay Colin, Michelle, JT, John. So I am not beyond begging you, the people. I won't beg oligarchs, but I will beg the proletariat. If you got as low as $5 a month, which is 16 cents a day, please do it now. Statuscoup.com/join. We're going to have our members video call tomorrow night. So if you sign up now, you'll be on our members call tomorrow night at 7:30 Eastern time. That's 4:30 Pacific. We're all sick, but we're going to do it anyway because we haven't done it in 2 months. But we had a good excuse not to do it for 2 months because we've been on the ground. So please, statuscoup.com/join. For as low as 16 cents a day, you get access to our monthly members call, behind the scenes videos from our on the ground reporting, and membership discounts. And Peter, you've been a member for ages.
Yes, I have.
Do you see a lot of other outlets doing what we're doing?
No, in fact, I don't see any. I think that and listen, I appreciate the candor and the direction that Cenk and Anna have taken the Young Turks over the past 2 years in lieu of what's going on in Gaza. But I don't see even an outlet like that clearly has the resources to be on the ground doing exactly what you're doing. They had you. They didn't replace you. They just decided, well, this wasn't worth our bottom line. Well, you know what? If you're on the mission, this is worth the bottom line. And I can say with complete clarity that if it wasn't for Status Coup News, revolutionary change would be nowhere near where it is now. And I can say this now because, as you guys know, I am now cross-streaming on my channel. There have been many instances over the past, I would say, year plus, when we were attempting to grow, that Jordan would share his audience with us when we would go live. And so to say that not only does Status Coup do great news, but they also pay it forward. So I am more than happy to be a paying member, as I would certainly encourage each and every one of you to do the same. This type of information, it is being blacklisted everywhere. And I know we're not going to get into it now, but there's a reason why even the slightest amount of investigative journalism that is done under certain outlets, like James Lee has been doing, has now lost his job. Because when you tell the truth, it is considered a revolutionary act, especially in the world that we're living in today. That is another example of it. So if you can, for as little as $5 a month, as we ask you on Revolutionary Change, please do the same for Status Coup.
Thank you, kind sir. Now, we're going to go through some of our on-the-ground clips, if you haven't seen them, so you know what we're talking about. But first, I want to set the scene here. I want to set the scene. Colin, if you could play that clip, this is about the wealth of the top 1% of Americans and how they have reached record highs.
The wealth of the top 1% reached a record of $52 trillion. According to the Federal Reserve, the new data shows all wealth groups saw gains over the past year, with the net worth of the bottom half of Americans increasing by 6% over the past 12 months, and the top 1% seeing their wealth grow by 10% over the past year. The increase follows 3 years of continued growth for those at the top.
Oh, wow. The bottom 50, a whole 6%? I'd like to know the Federal Reserve's math on that. I'll ask you in the audience, has your wealth grown in the last year of 6%? Or
no, but I bet the inflation has grown at least 6% for most people, probably even more than that.
Yes. And I would like to, on top of that, thanks to Colin or Michelle, I forgot who did this, I'd like to show you some other, wonderful economic marks in this great economy where the 1% have grown to $5 trillion. $5 trillion. Excuse me. 52. Axios poll finds a near majority of Americans say groceries are harder to afford today than a year ago. The bottom 60% of U.S. households don't make enough money to afford a minimal quality of life. That's from May. Hiring is at its lowest level since 2009, according to a new report. Was something going on in 2009? Oh, yeah, Wall Street tanked the economy and no one went to jail. Yeah. Hiring is at its serious credit card delinquencies climbed the highest level in 14 years. 1.2 million fewer jobs were created over the last 16 months than the government reported. So basically between Biden's and Trump administration, 1.2 million fewer jobs were actually produced than they claimed were produced. I mean, I could go on. There's so many late rental payments skyrocketing, foreclosures are rising, homelessness up. And just today it came out, Peter, last month, 32,000, a loss of 32,000 jobs. So I say all this because if you ask me, what's the greatest threat to Joe and Jane's six-pack America? MAGA, if you're listening, it's not brown people. It's the politicians in bed with the corrupt cesspool that have created an economic fucking Hunger Games, showering 1% of this country with $52 trillion while the rest of us are fucking killing each other for the scraps. But no, Peter, that's not the greatest threat if you listen to Emperor Trump or his chief stormtrooper, Greg Bovino. Colin, let's play the clip of the latest propaganda film from Border Patrol, which got $250 billion in Trump's big, beautiful bank robbery, basically hinting that they are going to now double down on their terrorism.
Sweet dreams are not made of this.
I just want to make a small point of order here, if that's the right phrase. Border Patrol, DHS, and ICE are every single video they do. They are just literally stealing footage. They stole footage from us, which we've been trying to find a lawyer to sue them. They steal copyrighted music from musicians who have demanded they take it down, and they don't. So they're literally, I'm pretty sure that famous song, they don't have permission to use. And I'm pretty sure most of the videos, they don't have permission to use journalist footage. So this is part of the lawlessness campaign that these thugs are waging.
A point of order and talk about lawlessness. If anybody knows anything about the great Irish Annie Lennox of the Eurythmics, she is as free Palestine as any noted musician, celebrity since day one. And again, us Irish, we have been always behind the Palestinian cause. So I have no doubt that if she does come across this and it is brought to her attention, she will sue, as she rightfully should.
So that's the backdrop. The actual crisis is we have a goddamn caste system in America, a new Gilded Age, and they're distracting you with basically a page out of 1938, 39, and to go after the criminals, but they don't care about the criminals that actually are affecting the majority of Americans, which are the Wall Street bankers that tanked the global economy and were never made to pay and are still defrauding people through other schemes. The fossil fuel CEOs who poison our water, soil, air, and animals get away with it. The pharmaceutical executives who poison and kill hundreds of thousands of people with OxyContin, the Sackler family who got a fucking fine and get to live outside of jail. The defense contractors who lie us into war on false pretenses, kill 500,000 to 1 million brown people around the world, not to mention the troops in America, the big tech CEOs that steal your data, sell it to third parties, get teens hooked on these algorithms who then kill themselves. I could go on and on. Those criminals, that's just the price of capitalism. But brown people who aren't committing crimes because it's actually a misdemeanor if you come here undocumented, this is the greatest fucking threat to humanity, Peter. And the victims, honestly, are not just brown people, but they're detaining American citizens. They're trying to slap felony charges on protesters. We've seen that in Chicago. And this is going to get worse because as the pressure cranks up on Trump over Epstein, over Doge, over the inflation sinking the economy, over all his corruption, what is his MO? Change the story, change the news cycle, do something else crazy. So I want to go through before we get to some of our clips. I mean, this would be a scandal with other presidents. With him, it's just been so normalized, his treachery. You have Border Patrol camera captured an exchange with a young man and an older man, which might have been his dad. We don't know. But basically, I'll read it from the Chicago Tribune. The younger man, who has placed his body between the older man and his agent, says he's a U.S. citizen. The agent asks if they could speak with the older man, but the younger man refuses. Please, the younger man says, he has a disabled child. That's not my problem, the agent answers. So let's establish. He's a U.S. citizen, says he has a disabled child. The ICE Gestapo, not my problem. That's just one. Then we get to pregnant and postpartum women report starving in ICE custody, freezing cells, invasive procedures, miscarriages, and their pleas for help are going unanswered. Let me repeat. There are pregnant women in ICE prisons, women who just gave birth in ICE prisons, reporting that they're starving. So not just they are starving, their unborn children are starving, which does a lot of damage if you're not eating enough while pregnant. Freezing cells, invasive procedures. We could only imagine what that means.
course.
and having miscarriages in ICE prisons. Then you have Tina, our colleague who does great work at Status Coup. She's doing a report on this, I believe, for Wired. But ICE has been illegally changing license plates and hiding license plates. So this is a scoop. After multiple reports of federal ICE agents illegally swapping out their license plates on rental cars, the Illinois Secretary of State sent ICE a cease and desist letter and warned rental car agencies they could be held liable for the activity. So it's just brazen lawlessness everywhere. Sex crimes against pregnant women, against female detainees, deprivation of medicine, all detainees, deprivation of food for pregnant women, going after disabled people. And then let's bring in Palantir to the equation. the surveillance fucking dystopia. So now there's a new Palantir surveillance tool called Immigration OS, which is being deployed in the U.S. to track and identify immigrants. Guess who is heavily invested in this? The Joseph Goebbels of 2025, Stephen Miller, is heavily invested in Palantir and is estimated to own from $100,000 all the way to $250,000 of Palantir stock. Well, I got news for you folks. Right now, there is a pretrial going on that I just covered the other day in the case of Luigi Mangione, the alleged shooter of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And as JFK once said, if you make peaceful resistance impossible, that leads violent revolution to be inevitable. Do we think all this lawlessness, all this terror campaign is not going to lead eventually to the proletariat fighting back? I'm not calling for that. I'm not calling for violence, but I'm just saying it's kind of inevitable. You think that Americans are going to take indefinitely mass thugs rounding up not just brown people, they have arrested Native American people, as I've reported, and detained them unlawfully. They have detained U.S. citizens. They put a minor in Alligator Alcatraz. We reported on that months ago. You think all this is going to happen and there's not going to be more assassination attempts against the people responsible for this? More violence against the people? More violence against the corporations that are complicit, like Palantir? And I want to make clear, so I'm not being distorted, this is not something I'm calling for, but this is something that it seems to me just through common human behavior might happen. Your thoughts?
I would also suggest that as somebody who, I freely admit, I'm much more of a hardliner on immigration than perhaps you and Jen are. But what I always say is, if you're going to have a hard line on immigration, I think that our borders are way too flexible when it comes to letting people in. I ask you, to those that support ICE, God forbid you actually support ICE, do you think that if we had a policy in this country that actually did not want to let people from third world countries in here to work for pennies on the dollar, that we would stop it? Or is it possible that the multinational corporations would have us all as slaves if they could get away with it? And that the next best thing that they could do, rather than see any type of labor revolution in the United States, is to open the floodgates, bring in people from desperate situations, have them work for pennies on the dollar, so that we're all fucked. And then in the haste, you're looking at it, oh, well, if we just get these people out of our country that came here illegally, that magically the multinational corporations are going to give you a living wage. They're going to give you single-payer health care. They're going to stop dumping in your neck of the woods when it comes to your air and water supply. See Jeff Bezos in the Space Coast in Florida and what he's doing over there. This is all about the collapse of capitalism, because we are run by psychopathic Zionist billionaires. That's it. There's no magic bullet here. And the Gestapo is ICE. They work on behalf of the people that don't want you to live a decent life. So when you're going after the people that are being thrown out of the country in very violent and outright unconstitutional ways, again, due process doesn't matter anymore. So you can throw that out the window. Supposedly that was in the Constitution, but our 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights went away with the Patriot Act. And now you're seeing it in full view. We have the legal authority to take out whoever the hell we want. But these people are really citizens. Who gives a shit? In our report, it says they're not. We'll deal with that later. And then they find out that they're actually citizens and they still deport them and they still keep them in places like Honduras and El Salvador. Again, this is crazy shit. And to me, it's all very common sense as to what the real problem is here. We're constantly distracted by stuff that has no bearing on what the real problem is. So if you're cheering on ICE and what they're doing, but not addressing the fact of how there are people working in this country for pennies on the dollar, then you are as big a problem as anybody else. That's my.
And by the way, if you're cheering on ICE, because two things could be true. You want to have a debate about the border, whether we should have a tighter border or not. That's fine. That no issue with that. But for the MAGA folks who have been hoodwinked into thinking that it's the brown people taking your jobs, that's not who's taking your jobs. Most of the jobs they're taking, most Americans don't want to do. The people who are taking your jobs are the multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerates that wrote the free trade deals that the politicians signed. That's who closed down your plants in the heartland.
That would be NAFTA and normal trade relations with China. And that is exactly what I got through in the 90s, and you're still feeling it today. But hey,
it's not Juan at Home Depot who's why you can't take a vacation anymore. It's not Juan at Home Depot, not to be stereotypical, but it's not Juan at Home Depot or 7-Eleven who's why you gotta ride Uber after your full-time job. It's the fucking big tech CEOs doing AI now to replace your jobs. It's the multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerates like JP Morgan and others who wrote the trade deals that sent our jobs to Mexico and China. I want Mexicans and Chinese to have jobs, but not at the expense of Americans. So all of this is said, I want to show you what's actually happening on the ground because like I've said over and over, there are very few outlets out there actually showing the fascism up close, showing the victims of the fascism. And again, shout out to our cameraman, John Farina, who was basically living in Chicago for us, away from his daughter, to show you this. He's been tear gassed God knows how many times. He's had stun grenades shot within 100 yards of him. When I talked to him, it literally sounds like he was just through a war. I have to tell him, take a few days off, not just for his physical health, mental health. And JT, our new reporter who's been doing God's work. I don't know what order you have it in, Colin, but you could just play whatever the first clip you have of our recent on-the-ground reporting.
ICE came and picked up their dad. I was pregnant with her when he came to get. I was 8 months pregnant.
Wow, so this is 2010.
2019. It was rough. I was 8 months pregnant. They came. They whipped up on us in black trucks like we were selling drugs or something. They took him out of his dad's arms and gave him to me, and they took his dad, and we never seen him since. He is in Sierra Leone. She never met her dad.
So sorry to hear that.
It's okay. It's life. Apparently, it's American life. It's how we live. We were a two-parent household. Now I'm only one. And America don't give no assistance, no anything to people who they have taken out of the household. So now I'm a single parent for no reason. I was engaged to be married. She never met her dad, ever. And he go through what he go through because of it. So that's why I had to bring them out here to approach.
So putting aside for a second the moral depravity of that you're ripping a child out of his father's hand, that the daughter never met the father, just put that aside, even though it's hard. There are economic consequences to all of this. Like, you might not think about it, but all these people they're deporting, that's 1/2 of a household's income. That is money that goes into our cesspool and Gilded Age economy. So you're leaving mothers or fathers, whoever is getting deported, to go from a 2-income household to a 1-income household, not to mention the trauma you're inflicting on their children. And for what? For what? These are the most pressing crimes? How about the school shootings? I could think of a lot more pressing crimes. How about the mall shootings, the concert shootings, the grocery store shootings? How about the surge of white national crimes, the domestic terrorism, the right-wing extremism, and there are rare occasions where left-wingers are committing mass shootings. How about the crimes of capitalism, wage theft, which is a massive crime that you will never hear on CNN or MS, whatever the fuck it's called now.
MS Now.
MS Now. But we gotta take the guy and send him to Sierra Leone. I mean, it's absurd. And MAGA, spare me. It's a crime. It's illegal. Okay. When you start crowing and getting loud about the bankers that fucking tanked our economy and foreclosed on millions of people, and Obama, who didn't do a goddamn thing about it, let him foreclose on millions of people, because it's a bipartisan thing. It's not just Trump and the Republicans. If you want to get hot and bothered on the oil companies that literally lied about climate change, hid it from the masses, and are responsible for burning our goddamn planet, the Sacklers who poisoned hundreds of thousands of people, killed hundreds of thousands of people. Those crimes, I don't hear that in the media. I don't even hear the politicians talking about it that much. But MAGA, so upset about her husband. Give me a fucking break. And by the way, that was in Charlotte. Sorry, I'm getting a little animated here.
Oh, but it would be a lot easier, as I would say to anybody out there who is a hardliner on immigration, like I am. If you want people to actually care about your cause, have a little humanity and recognize where the problem lies. The multinational corporations, the people who really run this country and run the world, can stop this problem anytime they want. But shareholder dividends and the bottom line is all that matters, period. So when you bring in all of these people, you really think this problem is just going to stop? So let's say that they remove a few 100,000 people from this country. Obviously, that's nowhere near as many as they decided to let in and basically force them to work jobs that pay them pennies on the dollar. But let's just say that that is the case. Do you really think that the pendulum is not swinging back again very soon, that the border gates will open all over again and the same issue will come about, where if you do not deal with the fact that we are living in an absolutely oligarchic travesty of a country right now, that you're going to somehow ICE is going to solve this problem? No. The only way this problem gets solved is if we recognize that we are in a revolutionary period. That's it. It's gotten to that point now. Does it have to be a violent revolution? No. But collectively, we have to put our differences aside and figure out how we are just like we're content. I mean, listen, the anger and the vitriol towards the state of Israel, the same has to be towards the multinational corporations in this country. And this is a prime example of that. Because if it happened to you, trust me, you wouldn't be so kind about it.
Colin, let's play the next one.
Nobody wants to be standing here right now watching what's happening and unfolding in America. But all the veterans beside me, all the veterans in front of me, and every veteran in this country, our oath did not have an expiration. And we swore to defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic.
I call them false patriots. You can fly the flag, but if you don't honor the Constitution, and if you thank us for our service, but then support a tyrant who attacks our own citizens with our own military personnel, who destroys our institutions from within, institutions that the American people have trusted for a couple hundred years, then I would say that they're betraying their oath. I always honored my oath to the Constitution. I always trusted my president and my government until 2017. That administration was bad.
So that was from a veterans march in D.C. that, to be clear, Status Coup was the only outlet live, mainstream or independent. CNN didn't air it. MS Now didn't air it. Fox News, who's got a hard-on for the veterans, didn't air it because these veterans were anti-Trump, so they wouldn't air it. I didn't see other independent outlets out there, to the point where the next day, when there was, they called it the Remove the Regime rally, we again were live there. And again, I might sound like a broken record, but Mama once said, if you don't advocate for yourself, Jordan, no one will. It's expensive to be on the ground. There's hotels, food. I got to pay the cameraman, pay the reporters. We were live, and for whatever reason, the actual organizers of that Remove the Regime rally, which I believe had about between 5,000 to 10,000 in D.C. about a week or two ago, YouTube blocked them from live streaming it. I don't know why, but they were blocked from live streaming it. So people had to rely on status coup because we were, again, the only ones live. We are often the only ones live or even on site covering the ICE terror campaign, covering protests against the Trump regime. By the way, we're not a team sport here. We have been there covering. I was on the ground at Standing Rock when North Dakota police were terrorizing Native Americans under a Democratic president. So if you're like a MSNBC refugee here and you think we're like Team Blue, sorry, I hate to break it to you, they're all fucking corrupt. They're all corrupt.
But they're less corrupt, Jordan. Don't you understand?
We'd make a lot more money if we just did 1,000 anti-Trump videos a month. But I have to be able to sleep at night and look in the mirror. I don't want to do a false equivalency. What Trump is doing is unprecedented. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you the Democrats are wonderful. They're not. But it's so important because we're not just doing this for clicks. You got to wake up the masses. That's the point of being on the ground. That's the point of showing you what's happening up close, being on the ground, whether it's police shooting at protesters or just interviewing people to tell their story. This reaches far and wide. I wish we had millions of subscribers, but some of our videos get 100,000, 500,000. One video is close to 1 million. And it's helping to wake up more people to what's actually going on, including my MAGA parents, who I've kind of sort of made some progress with my mother. My dad's he's too far gone, and he only cares about Israel, which we'll get to in a minute. But again, please, if you can, we want to stay on the ground, but we need to grow our paid membership to be able to stay on the ground in places like Chicago, Charlotte. We want to go to Minneapolis now. We do not have a massive corporation funding us like the majority of the media. Our funding comes from you. Statuscoup.com/join. Let me play this next clip. The Handmaids.
Actually, one of my friend's parents was detained right at the beginning with all of this, and he was actually at Broadview, and he had just received a diagnosis of colon cancer. So when you think about the people that are impacted, that was my friend's dad. He didn't have access to medical care. He just got diagnosed with cancer. A lot of the families there do not have access to the things that they need, their medication, at least a warm bed. They don't have anything. They're treating them like criminals, even though they're not. He was only at Broadview for a couple days by the time they told the family that they needed to, decide whether he goes to Indiana or Michigan. They had to move him, so then they had to follow, to make sure that he's getting the care that he needs, but he's not getting the access or the medication or things that he needs. He has diabetes, he has high blood pressure, he's not taking any of that medication.
And so now that's what your friend and his family have to do. They're following him around the country, trying to be sure that he can get life-saving.
And again, why clips like this are so important, and that was our reporter, JT Siskowski, at the ICE prison in Broadview, which is just outside of Chicago. And we were there for 2 months. Just in Chicago, we spent about $15,000. So we're walking the walk. That's why I'm asking for your help, folks. But why it's important is that clip illustrates a broader point. There are thousands of inmates being detained medicine. We saw this at Alligator Alcatraz, which also we went on the ground to that, yes, concentration camp. There are people with cancer. There are people with neurological issues. There are people with respiratory issues. There are people with all sorts of illnesses that aren't getting their medications in these ICE prisons. I don't call them detention centers. They're prisons. Not to mention people not getting their medicines and then being left out as punishment in the scorching hot Everglades, Florida sun. You know about the Everglades, you being from Florida, handcuffed in the heat for hours. People, we don't even know if people have died from lack of medication because we don't even have a true record of which inmates are in what prisons. And a lot of families spend half their time trying to find where their loved ones are because the ICE records are so flimsy. So
let's not forget that if anybody knows anything about what it's like on the East Coast, particularly South Florida, this is not just the burning heat. This is humidity that will basically dehydrate you very, very quickly. So to say that these people are being tortured, again, let's assume that they committed the crime of coming into this country illegally. Are we a nation of laws or are we not? Do we have constitutional rights? Or even if you believe that somebody who is illegal doesn't have constitutional rights, do we have constitutional laws of process? Yes, we do, unless you think it's acceptable to discard them. I don't. Just like I'm very adamant about the separation of church and state, which a lot of people apparently are not.
Right.
And I think we have to be very clear that while there are reasons to say there is concern about where this country is going in terms of its, let's say, immigration policy, if you're not going to address the heart of the issue, then it doesn't matter. It's just a waste of time.
Absolutely. I want to play another clip. This is from Charlotte because we were just on the ground in Charlotte where Border Patrol, for whatever reason, parachuted in, terrorized the community for a week, and then left. I don't even see the point, really. They're just kind of randomly picking cities on a map, going there, claiming there's a massive crime wave when there's not, terrorizing people. But this was a really powerful clip, I thought.
You see how they're taking away healthcare and all this other stuff? That's because they want everybody, they want the citizens of America to turn against each other, just like they did COVID, the population. They did the population control thing. They want to take the food and the food stamps away because they want y'all to start stealing from each other. They want y'all to start taking each other out. He wants to cause chaos. Why? For everybody who's a part of his agenda, that is not gonna. You notice they're rich as hell. You never really see them. They're somewhere put up, somewhere safe. You know why the White House is so guarded? Because when he tries to cause chaos and he tries to have y'all taking stuff from each other, killing each other, stealing from each other, even freaking doing things that you know is not right just because you're trying to survive, that's what he wants. Always have a good heart because you never know who you'll come across. You don't have to steal that food because somebody will split it with you. And you notice a lot of fruits don't have seeds because they don't want you to be self-sustainable. He wants to start a purge. He wants to start chaos. He wants people to go against each other. He wanted to be like the Hunger Games for real because that's why he took away food stamps. And my thing is, how the fuck are we in debt when all they do is print money and destroy it? Give the fucking people you're in debt to money, but all the rich people are in game. That shit don't mean nothing. Money is just a piece of paper. Money is the root of all evil because y'all wanted to kill, steal, and destroy others for it. But
I see you nodding your head.
Feisty girl, feisty young lady. And I will say that I think the powers that be are just looking at this as it's a risk reward type of circumstance. If there's 50 to 100,000 people that are protesting right now, it's not that big of a deal. But when there's 5 to 10 million people feeling the same way she does and are in the streets, yeah, they're not going to be able to get away with it. So it's just a question of when people start to lock arms collectively, put differences aside, and recognize that this is a class war, nothing more. It's all it's ever been. And it's getting brazen about it.
I want to play one more clip, and then we're going to get to Peter and his partner Jen have a new super PAC that might, you might be a super PAC. We don't like that. Well, it's for a good cause. We'll get to it in a second. But I want to play a clip. This is from a woman I interviewed the other day. I was out in front of the courthouse where Luigi Mangione, the alleged shooter of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, he was inside for his pretrial hearing. I did a video last night. Check it out, updating you on kind of the most relevant developments from 2 days so far of pretrial hearings. But there was a woman, it was clear to me she was an immigrant, but she's been in the U.S. for 38 years. She was dressed in a very interesting costume, I guess you say, amphibians against fascism. So Antifa, it was called. But she is an immigrant, which I don't think she's the exception. I think this is a growing number. She's an immigrant to the United States who now wants to leave.
Coming 38 years ago, because I bought into it, yes, I wanted to come here. 38 years later, after being here and realizing how it's more fast, it's more smokes and mirrors, I am ready to leave. I can't financially leave right now, but the first opportunity financially that I can get, I am leaving. And I'm leaving on principle because I feel that if I, as an immigrant, remain in a fascist country where America goes around the world, literally destabilizing other countries in the name of democracy, but we would sit here with a fascist in power. If I stay as an immigrant, I am rubber stamping it. I don't want to rubber stamp it. And I was telling somebody yesterday, yes, America gave me opportunities and I am grateful for it, but America has also gone into my country, into other countries in the Caribbean, into Africa, and taken our resources and brought it to America to make America great.
And by the way, we don't have time to get into it, but that's part of the equation. A lot of these immigrants, illegals, which I don't like that term, are coming here because we have fucking destroyed their countries. And we have created horribly violent, chaotic situations for them and their families where they are forced to flee through our sanctions, our drug wars, and all sorts of other shit. So what I found interesting about that, listen, we're not going to take a poll here. She's a U.S. citizen, came here legally. I'm guessing there's quite a lot of legalized immigrants kind of want to get out of here based on the discrimination, based on the terror. And to be clear, ICE was happening under Democratic presidents too. It might have not been happening at this level. It might have not been happening at this kind of terror campaign. But there has been ICE. Obama was the deporter in chief. That's what his nickname was, the deporter in chief. He just did it more civilly, right? So
it's been what it is. That's always been what it is. It's again, we'll just say somebody that you and I know pretty well would always say that Trump is the elite's shadow, and they don't like seeing it. They like it better when it's rosary language and they're treated with kid gloves. Yeah, we droned some folks. We totally droned the shit out of them. Yeah, we droned some folks. Wasn't that good. But hey, you know, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. We totally nailed them. We got them right where we want them, and I would totally do it again. So the way you talk about mass killing, mass deport, for the elites, it's not the act. It's the description of the act. That's how vain they really are. That's the whole thing. It's like if you're going to complain about Trump and his family and their crimes, you're not going to talk about the Bidens. You're not going to talk about Pelosi. You're not going to talk about also Schultz. If you're not going to talk about the fact that it is the system that is broken beyond repair, and that all Trump is doing is removing the veil so you could see it for what it really is, I'm sorry. The cat's not going back in the bag. Not in this current system. That's over and done with. It's just a question of when enough people like that young lady basically become revolutionized. That's where we're headed.
Which is another great segue into our last topic. And by the way, one more push. This on-the-ground reporting, and that was just a few. We have a lot more clips we haven't even released yet. This on-the-ground reporting, I believe, is crucially important to the point where I'm not telling you if you have memberships in other media to cancel them for us, but, you can if you want to. But what I am telling you, you got to think about it. I think people are just so used to, because media, and Peter, you know this, we've talked about it as friends. The media environment is beyond saturated. Everybody and their mother and their dog have a YouTube channel. Everybody and their mother and father and dog are influencers now, which I detest the name. Don't ever call me an influencer. Everybody has something, whether it's a YouTube channel, a TikTok, a Twitter, anything. There's just too much content, and we all only have so much bandwidth and time. But in that grand ocean I call the digital diarrhea, I could maybe count 1, 2, 3 outlets that actually go out, leave a studio, and go in the trenches to show you what's going on. And that's not counting, by the way, there are freelancers and documentary filmmakers, but I'm talking about like large, fairly well-known outlets. Democracy Now! Kind of used to do on-the-ground reporting, not as much anymore. Abby Martin is a great journalist. She's done great work in the field. There's very few outlets that consistently, keyword consistently, are out there because they're lazy, because it doesn't get rewarded in YouTube's algorithm, because it's expensive, for a lot of reasons. So what I'm asking you, and you might not have an extra $5 to $10 a month, and if you don't, that's okay. No shame. We don't want to make your financial situation any more difficult. But if you do have as low, you could become a paying Status Coup member to support this on the ground work for as low as 16 cents a day. I'm going to guess a lot of you have 16 cents a day, or can think of something you're spending $5, $10 on a week that maybe you don't really need.
Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime is living, breathing justice journalism that leaves the studio and goes on the ground worth it to you? That's what I'm asking. Statuscoup.com/join. All right. So for those who weren't here in the beginning, Peter is part of the Revolutionary Change YouTube channel with Jen Perlman, who was a candidate down in Florida for Congress, a great progressive. And you guys have been growing the last year or so for a lot of reasons, but you've been really, really aggressively and honestly. And Jen is, we should point out, is Jewish, speaking out against Israel's genocide in Gaza. I want to get to that. But I want to first play this clip because I think it's so illustrative of the elite's selective outrage. My child doesn't sleep. So when he's up all night, but he was up today at 6, and I put on Morning Joe. I listen so you don't have to. And if you notice, Peter, all of these multi-million-dollar journalists are so outraged at the war crime that Pete Hegseth and the admirals sinking that Venezuelan boat, which, by the way, is a war crime. I don't want to minimize it.
That was a good slip of tongue right there, admirables.
Yes. But they're outraged about this war crime. Let's show Joe Scarborough.
And by the way, I want to be very clear with all of my dear friends in the Central Time Zone that are just tuning in right now. We're not just talking about the Geneva Convention. Because when you talk about that, people go, oh, it's just pie in the sky. No, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about the Department of Defense Law of War Manual that specifically speaks in Section 5.9.4 about shipwrecked combatants and what you are not to do when they are taken out of the fight. This is not like something that's happening that lawyers are looking at in The Hague. This is the Pentagon's own rules. This is the military's own rules. When Pete Hegseth back in 2016 talked about that ethos, that ethos came from within the building. It came from within the services. It came from within the generals and the admirals, the military and the civilian leaders who determined that what happened, as reported by the Washington Post, was a war crime. It's the Pentagon's own rules.
Which brings us to your new effort. So I listened to this. On one hand, a broken clock is right twice a day. They're right. This is a war crime. But I didn't hear Joe and Mrs. Scarborough talking about the war crimes of the U.S. writing checks for Israel to bomb hospitals in Gaza, to bomb refugee shelters in Gaza, to bomb markets in Gaza, to do double, triple, quadruple taps strikes in Gaza, to bomb and shoot at starving Gazans as they were trying to get food off of food trucks. I didn't hear a peep from them about those are war crimes. I don't know if they're in the manual, but international law, which America doesn't like to follow, those are war crimes. So just seems to me they always seem more upset about Vladimir Putin's war crimes against Ukrainians than the war crimes we're funding against Palestinians. And now they are so outraged, again, rightly so, about Pete Hegseth bombing defensive fishermen, who, by the way, are not narco-terrorists, whatever. But they've been complicit in this genocide, which is, by the way, even though there's a ceasefire, Israel is still killing Palestinians, which is why I guess we need the effort you guys are doing. Tell people what you're doing.
So Jen ran for Congress twice against perhaps the worst of the worst when it comes to not just Democratic Party politics, but in terms of Zionist support and an outright acolyte of Netanyahu Milikowski, Bibi Netanyahu. Debbie Wasserman.
Wait a minute. What's his name?
So his real last name is Milikowski, and so what we have called him is Satanyahu Milikowski, because Jen always gets on me for ever referring to him as Bibi or Netanyahu, because that's not his real name. Much like the state of Israel, everything about them is made up. Mr. Milikowski is not from Israel. He is actually from Poland, raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and claims to have rights to land that is indigenous to people who are a much darker shade of skin than he is. In fact, the number one place in the world for skin cancer is in Israel. That should not surprise anybody, considering it is a state that is not only genocidal, but had started as apartheid. So what are we doing? We figured, well, we've already seen, and this is the very important point here, Jordan, that I think a lot of people in the audience really need to understand. The focus, and this is playing into the hands of the corporate establishment, this idea that the only NGO out there that we need to worry about that is facilitating congressional candidates, for example, on behalf of the state of Israel is not just AIPAC. They are one of several. DMFI is another one. The ADL, led by Jonathan Greenblatt, that is another example of an organization that is working on behalf of the state of Israel and their loyalties to the state of Israel. And that is to ensure that everyone who is elected at the federal level, but as now we're seeing at the state and even local level, you better adhere to the will of the Zio state. So how do we fight back? Well, we have started a super PAC that is called Revolutionary Change PAC. And right now, we've been doing it for a few months, and our intention is to support candidates that are not corporate funded, but are especially anti-Israel. And no, they do not fall into the banner of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. If they do happen to be an anti-Israel candidate that doesn't take corporate special interest money, that will be taken into consideration. But one of the things that a lot of these organizations tend to do, which is not smart, is they tend to bite off more than they can chew. Some of the organizations in the past that have tried to help, it's good to have a banner, but it's even more important to have a banner with teeth. And so that's where Revolutionary Change PAC comes in. And right now, we are currently supporting two candidates that are running in this country. One is Butch Ware, who is running for governor of California on the Green Party ticket. And the other is Shama Sawant, who is running for Congress in Washington's 9th district against one of not just a huge Zionazi in the form of Adam Smith, but he's also a geriatric who has been in Congress for literally a generation. He's been there for over 30 years. So to say that we have picked two candidates that are revolutionary in nature, but also if they are so fortunate to become elected into office, will actually push for actual change when it comes to our adherence to the state of Israel. And so what we've done is we have created this platform that we're using not only through our podcast, but also through this super PAC. We've created ads. A lot of you have obviously seen the lengthy ad that AZAPAC, Michael Rechtenwald, who we are working in conjunction with on the other side, because his PAC is focused on 3 candidates that are separate from ours. But as I said before, collectively working arm in arm to fight against this Zio state, to fight against this broken system. That is what this is going to take. And it will obviously require support, but we do have an ad or two for you guys to just get an idea of how we're getting our message out there.
Let's play.
The view of Palestinians is simple. Well, the Europeans treated the Jews badly, culminating in the Holocaust, and they gave them our land as compensation. Of course, we say it's our land. The Torah says it. They don't believe in the Torah. So, that's the reason there is not peace. And that is why we in America must stand strong with Israel through thick and thin.
For the past 2 years, we've been watching a live stream genocide in Palestine. People in this country are waking up to realize that our leadership has been compromised by the Zionist agenda. You can help us take back this country for ourselves and a free Palestine. Donate to Revolutionary Change now.
So that gives you a pretty good idea of what we're up against.
I want to ask some follow-ups because obviously if the pack grows, you're going to be attacked as anti-Semitic. So, and my card's on the table. I've always been open with the audience. My wife was born in Israel. She's got family in Israel. She's definitely not pro-Netanyahu and is horrified by the genocide. But just to stave off, you are not, this pack, the point of it is not to be against the Israeli people. The point of it is to be against the Zionist movement and the violent Zionist movement that America is funding. So from what I can tell, and also, again, your partner, Jen, is Jewish, you are joining with a considerable amount of Jewish Americans in opposing not Judaism, but Zionism.
I would definitely agree. I also believe that the state of Israel can no longer sustain itself, and it won't. It should be Palestine again. And I also believe that you're seeing the early stages of the collapse of the Zionist state. There are many examples to point to, including at least 1/4 to 1/3 of the Israeli population that is trying to flee to places like Portugal. We know Argentina is going to welcome them with open arms. Talk about irony. Then, of course, you have Cyprus, which they are systematically taking over. We are seeing them getting banned from a whole bunch of parts of the world that they've tried invading, including Thailand. I think that this is going to become an even bigger problem. We all know that they are going to most likely take over Southeast Florida. That should not surprise anybody. It's already that way in the congressional district that Jen tried to represent. It's that way from Palm Beach down to Miami. So this should not come as any surprise as far as how that goes. But in terms of where do we go from here, it is pretty clear that if there was a unifying issue amongst the entire political spectrum, that this is it. This is an issue where just about anybody at this point is willing to lock arms. We are seeing organizations that have been at the forefront of the Israel cause, specifically organizations like Turning Point USA, obviously the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro being one of the biggest spokespersons for the state of Israel. And then, of course, you have an organization like Stop Anti-Semitism, led by this Israeli woman that apparently had a lot to do with why James Lee got released from Breaking Points and also had his TikTok channel shut down. So it's going to get worse before it gets better. But just know that the arrow is pointing in our direction. Israel is on borrowed time, and it is imperative that we distinguish the difference between those that are Zionist and those that are not Zionist. The anti-Jewish, because it's not anti-Semitic, because let's face it, Ashkenazis are not Semitic people, but it's the anti-Jewish hatred that is growing exponentially in this country because of the likes of the Ben Shapiros, the Noah Tishbys, the Deborah Messings of the world, who are people that are of the privileged class who support the Zionist state. And then, of course, you have almost our entire congressional delegation on both sides. And then, of course, you are now seeing at the local level, this is becoming an even bigger problem. However, once the veil has been removed and once you see it for what it really is, it's just a matter of time before you have enough staying power to overrun them. And so we are asking each and every one of you, if you would be so inclined, to at least check out Revolutionary PAC, and you can do that at revolutionarychangepac.org. So that's our website. So go check it out. If you like Butchware, if you like Shama Sawant, we cannot communicate with them anymore because we are a super PAC. However, we have had them as guests on our podcast multiple times. So you can look into our archives and just see some of the conversation that we've had. Again, we're not going to get it all at once. It's not going to happen overnight. However, can we knock down some of these dominoes and create real, fundamental, downright revolutionary change? I believe we can. And that is just a small taste of what we're working on.
And I'll say, and I would encourage people, if you can, to support them. And again, it's not a super PAC in the, in the prism of what you would think of a super PAC, which are, just buying off politicians. This is a super PAC actually basically contributing only to politicians that don't take, tainted special interest money. But what I would say, putting my Jew card out there, although I'm not religious, I haven't willingly gone to temple probably in 20 years. I've gone for, weddings or things like that. But I will say this, to me, cards on the table. Again, my wife is Israeli. She has family in Israel. I know people in Israel. I personally believe in one state where both people have equal rights, Palestinians and Jews, not a Jewish state. Just like I don't think America should be a Christian state. I don't think any nation should be a religious state. But I also think if you are a Jew, whether you're religious or not, there's not a Jew in America that was not taught the horrors of the Holocaust. And unfortunately, I believe a lot of Israelis and Americans who are Zionistic have been brainwashed to the point that they don't realize that they are very much becoming like the German people in the 1930s and 40s by being complicit in genocide. It might look a little different than the genocide towards the Jews in Germany, but when you buy into there being an other, which a lot of Jewish people treat Palestinians like an other or terrorists or, some type of racially or ethnically inferior people, you're just becoming what murdered and slaughtered your families in Germany. So that's why I think it's important to support candidates that are against this. Not to mention putting aside, which is hard, putting aside the moral element of it, the genocide of it. Why would we not want to take out candidates that seem more, that are doing more for a foreign country, whether it's Israel or any country, that care more about a foreign country than they do about fixing the potholes here, that they do about providing health care here for Americans, that they do about providing education here for Americans, that they do on saving American jobs from the big tech overlords. Why would I want to support any effort to take out the politicians that, frankly, are more loyal to other countries? And let's start with Lindsey Graham and then go down. And no, that's not anti-Semitic, because people say, oh, that's anti-Semitic when you say people love a foreign country more than they do America. That's just reality. Most of these politicians care more about foreign countries than America, not just Israel, a lot of other countries. So, yes, I would encourage everyone to support. Before we go, is there anything else they should know?
We live stream on Mondays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, as well as Saturday. I do my solo show, Pontificating with Pete, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's nice to basically not have any competition on Saturdays.
Yeah, we got to really work on that name, Pontificating with Pete.
Well, it's not official. I just call it that. That's
okay.
DJ came up with that. But we did listen to you. We did actually take your advice, and you did say that going from generational change with a J, which cannot be found because it's not technically a real word, going to revolutionary change probably has paid dividends in terms of the channel growth, because it does at least show up on the Google algorithm from time to time. So I would imagine that your sound advice probably did make a difference as well. So thank you for that.
And by the way, originally I wanted to name Status Coup the People. The only problem was People magazine had an issue with it.
Wow.
Status Coup is a good consolation. So no complaints. All right, everybody, we'll put the link in the description for the Revolutionary Change Pack. Chip in what you can. Specifically, I don't know as much about Butch Ware, but I do know Shama Sawant. She's the real deal. Shama Sawant is a rough rider, and she's the real deal. She is responsible for a lot of the gains for working class people in Seattle. And I think she is somebody who, when she says we're going to bring the ruckus to the Democratic Party, she's coming with a blowtorch, unlike some others.
Unlike the person in New York City who said that that's what she was going to do. Yes. Get the real person in there who will do it.
Let me give some shout outs here. New Status Coup member Johnny signed up through YouTube. Again, we're having our members only call tomorrow night. We're going to do it sick because I'm sick and JT's sick, but we're going to do it anyway. So Johnny, anyone who signs up as a member now, you will get the link to the members call for tomorrow night. It's a video link. It's not Zoom, but it's kind of like a Zoom program. You don't have to have your video camera on. You could just listen if you don't want to be on camera. So it's always a lot of fun. We usually go about an hour, 2 hours. Minty signed up as a YouTube member. Thank you, Minty. Jim Tail, $3 super sticker. Appreciate it. Jezin82, $10 super sticker. Appreciate it. Jezin, $10 super chat. Trickle down economics, BS. Just give endless tax cuts to rich and destroy unions. That's of all the shame of MAGA. A lot of MAGA people are really hardworking, good people. And they don't realize they're just completely voting against their own interests, just like a lot of wine moms of the Democratic Party don't realize. Maybe they're not voting against their interests. They're voting against their children's interests by voting for corporatists like Joe Biden and his ilk. New member Brenda signed up as a new Status Coup YouTube member. Thank you, Brenda. Roger, $2. JC, did you know Peter came to Nassau last week? Nassau in Long Island. I did not know. That is where yours truly is from. A Massapequa native. Now it's unfortunately Magapequa.
I went to Oyster Bay to see Teddy Roosevelt's compound, if you will.
Oh, interesting.
That's a gorgeous town.
Tony D, Status Coup member, 44 months. I could tell JT is the spirit of a Midwesterner. Thanks for covering ICE in my backyard of Chicago. Protect Ilhan Omar. I hate this racism so much. There will be consequences for a lot of Trump's sycophants. Unfortunately, you'll have to wait several years for them. But thank you, Tony D. Daniela signed up as a YouTube member. Thank you so much, Daniela. Roger Meadow, $5. Would both you be interested in an interview with Cynthia Brown, who's running Citizen Amendment to end qualified immunity in Ohio? Yeah, email me, Jordan Chariton at statuscoup.com. I'm way behind on emails, but I'll try to look. Email the pitch. I have other candidates who have pitched. I'm just behind and a little sick right now. Roger, Peter, contact Andre Easton of PSL running for Torres to be maybe against Torres to be part of your PAC seat as an independent. Peep his policy platform. You could reach out to Peter. And again, it's really up to you, folks. It's really up to you. We could only go as far as you, the audience, take us. I'd like to keep the lights on, and I'd like to expand. Again, we've grown almost 250,000 subscribers this year. And just so you know, if you're not familiar with the YouTube game, it's really hard to grow subscribers on YouTube. It's a overly crowded space. There's a lot of content, and it's really hard. Some days in the past, there were days where we were losing, not gaining any. So the fact that we're growing this year shows that what we're doing, there's demand for it. But unfortunately, what we do, it costs a lot of money to do it. And we can take the easy way out. I've had offers, and I will write a book one day and tell you all about it. I had an offer a couple of years ago. I think you know from who, Peter. I think I told you.
Yes.
Of $500,000. The only problem was this was a Democratic Party sycophant who would not put in writing that I would maintain editorial control. And I'm human, so I thought about it because $500,000 would be a lot of money. And we could hire a lot of people. We could make $500,000 go pretty far. Ultimately, I said no because at the end of the day, we're either going to do this the right way and we're going to keep it what it is, which is independent guerrilla justice journalism, or we're going to fold the tent and go do something else. So I'm not giving away the keys to this to sycophants or corrupt donors of either party or corporate America. And by the way, it's a lot harder to do it this way. It would be a lot easier for me to hawk gold like some other channels.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Roger Meadows again, $2. Peter X Deep 6 my account. I can't contact you. Don't know.
Send an email. Always
yes.
recommend emailing us directly.
Thank you, Colin, behind the scenes. Are you on tonight? No, that's tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Yes, that will coincide with your call, but hey, join us afterwards. We'll be on for 2.5 hours.
Hey, you could be on the call and watch. I'm sure
Oh,
most
you
of you
can
can
go at the
multitask.
same time, exactly. And then, of course, join
And-
us on Saturday night.
And everyone watching right now, there's one thing you can do for free. Go over and subscribe to Revolutionary Change on YouTube. Revolutionary Change on YouTube. Go give them a subscribe. Check them out. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Colin. We'll be back at it tomorrow.